I've got this. I've got this. All roads lead to crab!
In 2017, behavioral ecologist Mark Ladry documented some pretty odd behavior from coconut crabs on a small island in the Indian Ocean. He had set up cameras to better understand
Didn't coconut crabs eat Amelia Earhart?
their foraging patterns. And in the middle of the night, one of the cameras showed a coconut crab climbing a tree. And yes, climbing. Eventually walking out into a low branch where a booby, a type of bird mind you, was sleeping. At that point, it then proceeded to stretch out its claw, lock them around the bird's wing, and boom, snap, breaking its wing and causing it to fall to the ground. Now, the bird tried to fight back, but he might as well have been fighting a living tank, as the crab did not give any quarter, and proceeded to smash the heck out of it, ultimately causing the bird to become paralyzed. And within 20 minutes of this starting, 5 more of its bloodthirsty homies had shown up to join the, fun. And by morning, the bird was completely gone. And when I say gone, I mean eaten. Now, Mark also surveyed the surrounding islands.
I would hate to be a fucking bird where there's coconut crabs. You know, if I was a bird and I spawned on an island with coconut crabs, I perhaps am going to fly to another island. Coconut crabs are... Crabs love boobies too. Yummy!
Islands, and found something rather grim, which is that on islands with high coconut crab densities, ground nesting seabirds basically do not exist. On the flip side, the one nearby crab-free island in the survey found ground nesting birds were happily nesting on the ground like, well, any other self-respecting ground nester. So in other words, an entire seabird community had been bullied, or rather made locally extinct, by an arthropod. Oh, and by the way, coconut crabs aren't technically crabs. Yeah, the name's deceiving. And as it so turns out, coconut crabs are not alone in this. A surprising number of the animals we casually call crabs aren't actually crabs in the taxonomic sense.
Why are they not called crabs?
They just look like them. King crabs, not crabs. They're hermit crabs that gave up on the shell. Porcelain crabs, not crabs either. They're more closely related to squat lobsters.
What are... Bro, these are crabs. Look at them. That's a crab. What do you mean that's not a crab? Dog, that's a crab. Look at it. It's got the claws and pincers. That's a crab. Then don't call them a crab then. Exactly. Why are you calling them a crab if they're not a crab?
Hairy stone crab clinging to rocks in southern Australia, while also looking like a crab and being hairy, also not a crab. And coconut crabs, the nightmare fuel that they are as we just established, also not crabs. And the really weird thing isn't just that they aren't crabs, it's that they aren't even closely related to them either. These are completely separate lineages of crustaceans that somewhere along their evolutionary history independently arrived at roughly the same body plan, despite starting from totally different taxonomical places. And this happens so frequently that there's even a name for it, carcinization, a term coined back in 1916 by an English zoologist named Lancelot Alexander Borradaile, who described
What a fucking name. What a guy. My name is Lancelot Alexander Borradaile, and I study crabs. I am Lancelot Alexander Borradaile, and I invented the term carcinization. What a guy. What a fucking guy. Captain Cactus, hello, hi, hello, hi. They're distant cousins of crabs. It might be how, like, we're cousins to chimpanzees. You know? We're cousins to bonobos. Got my next D&D character name, Lancelot Alexander Borradaile.
who described it as nature's many attempts at evolving, well, crabs. And in a 2021 phylogenetic synthesis, researchers estimated that the fully crab-like body plan has evolved at least 5 times.
My guy has the name of a random Brit found dead in a Sherlock Holmes novel.
Independently in different lineages, which is why there's a meme floating around the internet that says that everything eventually becomes a crab. Now obviously the meme isn't literally true, evolution isn't running around with some kind of crab zapping wand, and humans, fortunately or unfortunately depending on your feelings about having claws, aren't going to be turning into one either.
No!
But the shape really has been reinvented again and again, in lineages with completely separate evolutionary histories, and the question of why turns out to be pretty interesting. Now, to actually get into the why, we need to define what becoming a crab really means. Because just saying looks like a crab is doing a lot of work, and not especially helpful, with the specific changes involved actually mattering.
He's dancing!
So to understand this, we need to go back to the basics. the starting point, if you will. Which for all decapod crustaceans is very roughly a more shrimp-like body plan, meaning elongated body, long muscular abdomen trailing out from behind, and a carapace longer than it is wide, etc. And that is the classic shrimp to lobster silhouette. And the really key thing about this is that the tail is exposed. And not only exposed, but also extended, and, well, useful. Because you see, lobsters and shrimp use that tail for what's called the charadoid escape reaction, which is basically when they flex the abdomen and tail and rocket themselves backwards to the water like organic jet skis.
Ooh.
Now, it's fast and obviously works, but at the same time, from a predator's perspective, that long muscular tail hanging out from the back is basically a grab me sign, or perhaps a bite me sign.
Yummy.
So, to become crab-like, the whole setup has to shift in a few coordinated ways. The shell on top has to flatten and widen, the separate plates on the underside merge together to form one wide, flat shield, and then the long abdomen has to shrink, fold forward, and tuck up under the body. And fun fact, there's actually a fancy developmental term for the tail tucking part, and that is called brachiorization, which is a sciencey way of saying the abdomen folds forward during metamorphosis. And remember that part, as we're going to come back to that in a bit, as the genetic mechanism behind brachiorization turns out to be a lot more interesting than the word makes it sound, and is basically one of the keys to this whole becoming a crab thing. But before we go there, quick taxonomic distinction. There are two major groups of crustaceans that we're talking about here. Brachyura, the true crabs, which originated as one lineage and stay that shape with not so much variation.
Hold on. What's the tastiest looking crab on here? Which crab looks the tastiest to you? This one behind me is kind of cute because it's got like little cat eyes. It's very cute, but it doesn't look very tasty. But I will say, like, this one looks tasty. Bottom left, because it's colorful. He looks a little small. I'd have to eat like 5 of them suckers. All 3 at the top are chunky. Like, I feel like these would feed me. Top, middle, right. Yeah, these look yummy. True crabs. Crabs in the ocean acting snobby. You're not a true crab, my brother. We're the Brachyura. We're the real crabs. You're not a real crab. Oh, yes.
And is also the reason why it's called brachiorization. And then Anomura, a sprawling group that includes hermit crabs, king crabs, porcelain crabs, squat lobsters, mole crabs, and a bunch of other random characters.
Oh,
now,
the side characters.
The easiest way to tell them apart in person is to count the walking legs. True crabs have 1 pair of claws up front and 4 pairs of walking legs behind them. However, on the flip side, many crab-shaped Anomurans have 1 pair of claws and only 3 obvious pairs of walking legs, because the back pair is reduced and tucked up under the carapace, where it mostly
I didn't think we were going to be dissecting here.
gets used for cleaning the gills. Small anatomical difference, yes, but it's important, as it means a king crab and a Dungeness crab, which is, yes, its actual name.
Wait, we watched a video about Dungeness crabs. It was I watched a video like forever ago where a guy had 500 undersized Dungeness crabs, and if you get an undersized crab, it's a $5,000 fine or a year in jail. I remember watching that video vividly. I love Alaska fish and wildlife. They look depressed because they're hunted because they're yummy, apparently. These apparently are really tasty.
Who might be on your plate are in reality, despite appearing to be cousins at the very least, are separated by hundreds of millions of years of independent evolution. So yeah, they are more distantly related than we are to literally any other living mammal on Earth. Anyways, going back to the star players here, the crabs, well, not crabs, but crabs in name and crabs in shape and, well, you get the point. So, king crabs are one of the more dramatic transformations in this story, at least evolutionarily speaking. You see, they aren't crabs.
Would you say they're closer to being a sea spider than a crab then? Because they're so fucking spindly? Well, I think there's also something called a spider crab, no? Aren't there things called spider? I think I saw it in like an aquarium once, like a spider crab. They looked fucking scary. I think they're not, like, I think they prefer like the deep sea, so the tank was like all black. Like, it's so dark to see in there, and during Halloween, they put like a bunch of decorations in the tank to make them look scarier because they're terrifying looking.
Which, yes, has been established, but get used to hearing this. They're rather hermit crabs that decided to be a bit more social. So, hermit crab lineages have spent over 100 million years renting out discarded snail shells. Their entire anatomy has been shaped by that lifestyle. Asymmetric claws, because the larger one has to plug the entrance to the shell like a cork, A soft, uncalcified abdomen that coils perfectly into the inside of a gastropod shell, and a growth ceiling that's basically capped by how big of an empty snail shell they can find on the seafloor, which means a hermit crab's entire life is essentially one long, stressful search for a home. In a landmark study from 1992, placed king crabs phylogenetically inside the hermit crab genus Pagurus, and pretty much every molecular study since has confirmed a hermit crab ancestry. So the idea is that somewhere in the past, selection started favoring hermit crabs that could calcify and harden their own abdomens, basically growing their own shells instead of renting one out. And once that shell size constraint relaxed, well, level up, as the lineage produced some absolute giants. For example,
they do line up in trade shells. I've seen videos of like hermit crabs of like they're so cute, and they just like trade shells and they're so cute. If you're allergic to sea bugs, you can also be allergic to land bugs. That's so interesting. Enough. Thank you for the follow-up. If you enjoy, stay as a blood bite. Thank you, thank you. Are we human snail crabs without the trading shell parts? Are we the king crab of mammals? Espen, hello, hi, hello, hi. They turned that hermit house into a hermit home. Same protein causes the allergic reaction. That's so cool. Society would be better if we traded homes when we needed a new one. Yeah, true. Hand me your house keys. I need to upgrade.
A big red king crab can reach roughly 28 centimeters or 11 inches across the carapace, and then a leg span of around 6 feet or 1.8 meters.
Oh, they're
and
big.
Weigh up to about 28 pounds or 12 kilograms. So in other words, basically a small dog with very, very long claws.
A small dog.
And if you flipped one over, the abdomen is still subtly asymmetric, a leftover from an ancestor that once coiled into a spiral shell. Porcelain crabs, the family Porcellanidae, are another case of carcinization, but they went in a totally different direction. They evolved from a squall lobster-like ancestor and stayed tiny, with some species so flat that they can squeeze into a crack thinner than your finger.
No!
What's odd is that their big front claws aren't really used to assist with eating. That's instead handled by feathery mouth parts that sweep plankton out of the water like a biological strainer, whereas the claws are then mainly used for defense and maybe beating up other porcelain crabs. Let me tell you, these guys are hella committed to the idea of not dying, to the point where if something just grabs one by the claw, the crab will just decide to self-amputate itself instead of risking it, essentially cutting off its own claw. And like seriously, it just pops it off, sprints away, and then regrows a replacement over the subsequent molds like nothing happened, except perhaps for some lingering mental trauma. Which is honestly a pretty elegant solution to the specific problem of having evolved good armor, but also being bite-sized. And then phylogenetically, recent work suggests that the Porcellanidae actually represent one of the older carcinization events within the Anomura, being considerably older than the king crab lineage. So basically the small porcelain crabs came first, and the giant king crabs are the new kids on the block, by comparison. The hairy stone crab, Lomus hirta, which is also my personal favorite, is from another family called Lomicidae.
What a good name. I would definitely agree with the name, the hairy stone crab. I wouldn't call it anything else, actually. I would not. Espen, thank you for the 3-stream shriek. Yeah, you've definitely seen me around. Lomicidae kind of eats, though. I feel like limited, but like hairy stone crab, shave that crab. Do you think you can put some shaving cream on this bad boy? There's also pea crabs, which are smaller than the tip of your pinky. Oh, it's so cute. Looks like crab, looks like rock, has hair. Yup, hairy stone crab.
Now it lives in the rocky shores of southern Australia, maxing out at about 2.5.
It's so little! He's so itty bitty! Look at him! Look at the hairy stone crab! Look at the hairy stone crab, he's so itty bitty!
Centimeters, or roughly an inch across the carapace, and then is covered head to claw in a thick coat of brown, adorable fuzz. Obviously the fur here is not for warmth, but rather to give the animal a muddy rock-like camouflage so it can cling under stones instead of trying to outrun anything. And then there's the coconut crab, Burgus latro, which we already met committing a felony at the start.
Committing a felony at the start! Climbing a tree and breaking the wings off a bird is kind of hardcore. I hope all the birds evacuate from Coconut Crab Island.
And also descended from hermit crab-like ancestors, just like the king crab, but this time going in a completely different evolutionary direction. As juveniles, coconut crabs actually behave like ordinary hermit crabs.
Oh, they actually carry coconuts?
Snail shells for protection. Then at some point during growth, they just stop. Instead of looking for a bigger shell, they just never look back. instead hardening their own.
Well, yeah, he's not fast, but the bird was asleep. The fucking crab came in the night to break his arms. Dude, imagine you're sleeping peacefully in your fucking house and a coconut crab arrives and breaks your fucking legs so you can't run, and you wake up and it's just fucking eating you. When they grow up, they stop being afraid and become the fear. Jesus Christ.
Abdomen. And as they get older, they also develop brachiostegial lungs inside where the gills are, which is basically gill-like tissue but specialized for breathing air instead of water, and essentially makes them land animals in the practical sense. Now, females still do have to return to the sea to release their eggs, but if you held an adult coconut crab underwater for any meaningful amount of time, it would actually drown, which is kind of wild in itself, a crab that can drown.
I figured out how to survive a coconut crab. You get attacked by coconut crabs, run into the ocean. Hold them under. They'll let you go eventually. We found their weakness. Run into the water. Take it caving. Take it to that fucking death cave.
No wonder it's not a real crab. Am I right? That said, though, they're not the only landlubber crabs that need air. And there are...
Which would you prefer? Facing the scary things in the ocean or facing the coconut crab? I prefer the ocean. A lot of the scary things in the ocean are like sharks, you can redirect them. I feel like the counter to coconut crab is just swimming. It's close to midnight, something evil's lurking in the water under the moonlight. Yeah, bro, me. I'm bringing a hammer to these coconut crabs.
Actually some true crabs that have also shunned the water, but I digress. Now, honestly, the coconut crab might be the most over-the-top, quote-unquote, crab, period. And by a wide margin at that. And that's not just regarding their whiteness, pun intended.
Do you still think the coconut crab's weak to the golf club? You feel like the coconut crab's still weak to the golf club? Look at it. Look at it. Do you feel like you could survive golf clubbing that thing?
As there's a lot going on with them beyond just the size. Take their sense of smell, for example. A 2005 study found that coconut crabs have evolved an olfactory system that doesn't really resemble other crustaceans at all. Their olfactory neurons look shockingly similar to that of insects, not only morphologically but also behaviorally and physiologically, which has been hypothesized as a potential consequence of the transition to land. And as is so fitting of their name, another study identified a specific volatile compound called acetone as one of, if not the chemical, that attracts them to food. And guess where this chemical can be found, among other places? Yeah, in coconuts.
Coconuts!
So to recap, this is a crab, not crab, that evolved from a not crab to crab, while also picking up an insect-style sense of smell, so convergent evolution within convergent evolution. And coconuts. Then there are the tools of mass destruction, or at least, foul destruction. In other words, the claws. And when I say tools of destruction, I mean it. As a 2016 study which caught 29 wild coconut crabs, ranging in body weight from about 33 grams up to around 2.1 kilograms, and basically clammed each one onto a force sensor to see what they could do. And let's just say, they definitely could do. As individual pinches range from roughly 29 newtons at the low end to about 1,765 newtons
That's
at
a
the
big
high
range.
end. And when the researchers scaled their data up to a maximum recorded body weight for the species, around 4 kilos, they estimated a potential pinching force, if you can still call it that, around 3,300
They can cut metal.
newtons, which, just for context, the average human grip strength is about 400-ish newtons. So we're talking.
I think if I get attacked by a coconut crab, I'm just gonna go swimming. I feel like the strat is just to go in the ocean and hope it drowns. Thank you for the reference for the hyena bite force, but I've never been bitten by a hyena. With a grip like that, this crab could be my ex-girlfriend. Can I meet her? Is she single?
Talking about an animal many times smaller than you, but has a pinch 8 times stronger than your hand. So, maybe don't agree to thumb wrestle one of these guys. And their predator behavior does not stop at pinching. Coconut crabs will eat or try to eat just about anything, feeding on fruit, carrion, and will even engage in cannibalism, eating their own kind, because apparently chill is lacking despite being named after coconuts. Oh, and just to top it all off, they have been reported to be able to live up to 60 years.
That motherfucker could outlive you! Imagine it fucking takes your ankle And then you go to see, like, oh yeah, I bet this bitch is dead. It's still alive. In fact, it's chilling on the beach with a fucking mojito. With somebody else's fucking ankle. Praying mantises live a year? They live a long time. Wow, that's crazy. Jesus Christ. Doesn't the American lobster only die because, like, the shell doesn't expand and they grow too big for their shell and the shell, like, kills them? They don't really die of old age. They die of shell being too small and they could theoretically live forever. Or is that a myth? You can almost get a pension. American lobster healthier than Americans. Not surprising. Not surprising.
Which for an arthropod is straight up unhinged. Okay, so we've got king crabs, porcelain crabs, hairy stone crabs, and coconut crabs, all as independent carcinization events within Anomura. Plus, of course, the true crabs themselves.
Oh, it's kind of a slow to eat and then don't have energy to molt kind of thing. I guess it would be old age then. Yeah, shedding becomes too much effort. Okay, so so it's actually old age because they can't molt because, okay, that makes sense. That is actually old age then. This crab really is so cute though.
Over in Brachyura, so multiple separate inventions of basically the same thing. But as it so turns out, becoming a crab doesn't have to be a one-way street, even for the true crabs. Take the frog crabs.
Oh.
They are true crabs, which means their ancestors got crabified in the standard way a couple 100 million years ago or so. But somewhere down the line, selection for burrowing in loose sand started favoring a longer, more cylindrical.
I can see why it's called the frog crab. Frog crab looks inside crab that looks like a frog. Sounds right to me.
Streamlined body, and the tucked tail started coming back out. And this is a real phenomenon that biologists call decarcinization. I know, shocker. And in that same 2021 synthesis I mentioned, researchers flagged at least 7 apparent losses of the crab body plan across the decapods. So evolution made a crab, took a second to look at it, and went, actually, never mind, put that tail back. And a few times over at that. And in between these extremes, you've got animals that—
Guys, this crab looks like he means business. He's staring at you like, did you turn in your report yet? I need that fiscal end of the year report, and I need you to hand it on my desk now. I told you to hand that report in last week. Fucking arms crossed. This is your boss. Holy. This guy means some fucking business. He stood up. I would not keep a crab as a pet. Maybe like a little one. It looks like he's about to inform his evil lord that the prisoners have escaped, my lord. He's looking at me like I said I would give him gas money. You owe this crab money. WYD.
Show why carcinization is honestly better thought of as a gradient than a binary switch. Squall lobsters are a clean example of this, and the name, like normal I guess, is pretty misleading because they aren't really lobsters. They are Anomurans, but they're more closely
Thank you for gifting a sub to Krabby Crab, thank you.
related to hermit and porcelain crabs than to anything you'd put in a bisque. Their carapace is somewhat flattened but still longer than it is wide. Their claws are often weirdly, almost comically long, and their tails partially folded under but then not fully tucked. So they kind of look like someone started building a crab at Build a Crab Workshop, but then got distracted halfway through and decided that it was good enough, which for their environment, it actually was. And speaking of environments and lifestyles, the crab body plan is pretty much like a Swiss Army knife, because it seems to do it all. Without the tiny end of the spectrum, you've got the peat crabs in the family Pinotheridae, which grow to just less than a centimeter and spend most
These are the little ones.
of their lives living inside oysters, clams, and mussels.
They're so
But
little.
then at the giant end, you've got the Japanese spider crab.
Ah, this is the one I'm talking about, the Japanese spider crab. I literally mentioned these. Look at them. Look at them. Fucking spindly. I've seen one at the aquarium. They're fucking horrifying. I want to eat one.
Kira Kaimferi, whose leg span can reach roughly 3.7 meters, or about 12 feet from claw tip.
Yeah, no, they're like really big. Like, I'm telling you, they're really big. Can we eat? Can we eat them? Can we eat this? You know kung fu.
To claw tip, making it the longest leg span of any living arthropod. Then you have ghost crabs on the other hand.
He's called the ghost crab. Japanese spider crab versus 100 pea crabs. Look at him, he's so cute. Look at his eyeballs. He's like, ooh, 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 ooh. Ooh, he's so cute.
Who are quite small, They can then sprint across beaches at speeds of about 2.1 meters per
Oh
second.
my god, he's fast as
or roughly
fuck.
6.9 feet per
He's
second.
fast as
all the while
fuck.
having muscle contractile properties and locomotor characteristics that look weirdly similar to those of a mammal, not a crab. Which is not a sentence I would ever expect to say about, well, a crab. And then there's the coconut crab, which, as we covered, found the word pairings of ocean and no thanks, with chicken and yes thanks quite tantalizing. So clearly the crab shape isn't just specialized for one thing, which thus begs the question of why this shape is such a versatile, well, shape in the first place. And the answer is mostly mechanical. First off, a flat, wide body gives a lower center of gravity that makes the animal more stable on uneven surfaces like intertidal zones, while then also giving it its key ability, the sideways shuffle, which allows the crab to dart left or right, while most of its predators are forward-moving animals.
I'm sorry, Revan. Humans will not eventually become crab. It's too late for us. We cannot become crab. It's too late for us.
And of course, the tucked tail removes what would otherwise be a perfect grabbing zone for would-be predators, as you literally cannot grab a crab by the tail, because duh, there is no tail to grab.
No tail.
Now, interestingly, true crabs likely originated around the Jurassic period based off of fossil evidence. But a lot of their modern lineages diversified during an interval of roughly 145 to 66 million years ago. And paleontologists call this stretch the Cretaceous Crab Revolution.
Ooh.
And it overlaps with a broader event called the Mesozoic Marine Revolution, where marine predators evolved stronger jaws, more specialized drilling and crushing structures, and more efficient ways to crack, peel, and grind hard prey. And of course, when that happens, the pressure rounds the other way too, for prey. And so the whole marine ecosystem was basically a slow-motion arms race for millions of years. Now, was it this event that drove the massive diversification event in crabs? Hard to say. But funny enough, it's often crabs that are included in the list of those shell-cracking predators, not as the prey themselves. So there's definitely something going on here. But regardless, the fossil record from this period also gives us some genuinely strange animals, with combinations of features unlike anything alive today. For example, Calica chimera perplexa, found in Cretaceous rocks in Colombia, and
Yeah, I am awfully perplexed looking at this fucking thing. I am awfully perplexed looking at it. When did they evolve to be delicious? Right around here, I reckon.
Cretaceous rocks in Colombia, and described in 2019, has been nicknamed the platypus of the crab world because it combines a crab body plan, but with huge unprotected compound eyes and paddle-like legs for swimming instead of sidewalking, and all in a
Anxiety
body
crab.
about the size of a quarter. Then a 2022 follow-up study looked at its
Oh,
eye
he was
anatomy in
little.
detail and found that its compound eyes were enormous relative to its body size and grew rapidly during development, both of which are classic signatures of an active visual predator. So anyways, we have a decent answer for what carcinization is, when it was happening, and roughly why. But the last question still unanswered is the how. Like, what is actually happening that makes the same shape somehow so reachable for so many different lineages? And is it possible in humanity? Just asking for a friend. And so the answer to this is that a study on the Chinese mitten crab tracked gene expression during the metamorphic transition when the abdomen first folds under, and identified that certain genes showed decreased expression at exactly that moment, such as SCR and ANTP. Now, these are Hox genes, which is the family responsible for laying out the body plan of an animal during development, basically acting like the master architects, telling different body segments what to become. And so, unsurprisingly, these are deeply conserved across animals, like properly ancient as ancient can be, and show up in basically every bilaterian animal, so from flies all the way to kangaroos. And in crabs, these Hox genes get downregulated at certain developmental moments, driving the brachiorization. So what this means is that the entire crab look isn't being built by inventing new genes from scratch in each lineage. It's rather being built, or debuilt, by dialing down or up certain genes at the right moments during development. And so what this means is that for any decapod lineage that has these genes lying around, and they all do because Hox genes are pretty much universally conserved across animals, becoming crab-shaped is less about evolving a whole new body plan and more about turning levers on existing developmental instructions, which I guess you could say is the case for many evolutionary quirks, but still. So this is at least a clue for how brachiorization happens in true crabs, and is likely similar to what happens in Anomura. Now whether it's the exact same levers, that's an open question. But the takeaway is,
we still don't know.
As long as decapod crustaceans exist, so will crabs. And to answer that so burning question, no crab humans in the foreseeable future.
No.
And with that, I'll leave you here. Thanks for watching, and until next time.
Thanks, buddy. That was really educational. I loved that video. You either die as a mollusk or you live long enough to become a crab. In evolution, you have two choices: return to monkey or advance to crab. I'm already practicing my side steps. All roads lead to crabs. My ex tried to play this one on me. Nice try! In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only crabs. Which means the hermit crab's entire life is one long stressful search for a home. Same. What you got there? 7 billion crabs. If you think about it, the eventual goal of having advanced and elective prosthetic cybernetics is essentially our version of crab. Ooh. 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 Cretaceous Cretaceous Crab Revolution is a killer band name. But are they delicious with melted butter? In engineering, everything becomes a bus. In biology, everything becomes a crab. We're just a crab bus away from nirvana. Crab rave.